Hi guys, it's Mark Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi, also known as Mark Zicree of Space Command and Star Trek and Smurfs and He-Man and Real Ghostbusters and Captain Power and many, many other shows, Deep Space Nine, etc. So, we're here to talk about the Oscars. And I watched it the other night. I was very thrilled at some of the winners, particularly the fantasy films. Jordan Peele won Best Screenplay for Get Out, and Guillermo del Toro won Best Director, Best Feature, Best Picture for Shape of Water. Amazing thing, amazing thing. In the old days, fantasy films, science fiction films did not get nominated for Oscars. Maybe they'd get a Best Visual Effects, you know, something like that, Best Makeup. For instance, Seven Faces of Dr. Lao was the first film to ever win a Best Makeup Oscar, deservedly for William Tuttle's amazing work on that film. If you haven't seen it, I urge you to. It's a great film with a script by Charles Beaumont, based on the book by Charles Finney. Really a phenomenal film, but I digress. But now, fantasy and science fiction films can win Best Picture, can win Best Screenplay. Return of the King, Lord of the Rings won a few years ago. Now Guillermo and Jordan Peele have their turn. And this is great also because in the old days, Mexican director or a black director would not have had a chance. They wouldn't have gotten in the door decades ago. And so when we talk about let's go back to the way things used to be, I don't want to go back to the way things used to be. And also both films are about racism. Guillermo's film comments on homophobia, comments on the other, the notion of the other, comments on a lot of things. And both films, I think, are compassionate and and the individual work of these filmmakers. They're very much the individual voice of these writer-directors, and I applaud them. And also, I have a connection to both of them. So let's talk about that and where things are heading. Many of you know that I wrote a book with Guillermo del Toro recently called Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities, about his films, his life, his houses, all that stuff, his creative process, his notebooks. Guillermo, when I saw Guillermo recently, said, well, let's update the book, which I think we should, because Shape of Water is a terrific film. When Guillermo and I were hanging out working on the book, Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of his two favorite monsters, the other one being Frankenstein's monster, and he had model kits and figures of the creature throughout his house, and this is his version of Creature from the Black Lagoon. When he was 9, he thought that when he saw the film, he thought the girl and the creature would end up together. He was very disappointed when they didn't, and this is his reworking and reimagining of that film. Great performance by Sally Hawkins, and Doug Jones plays the creature, and Doug, as you know, stars in Space Command, which is the project we've been shooting and are now pitching as a series. If you want to see more of Doug in Space Command, you can see him in a lot of the other Mr. Sci-Fi videos. If you don't subscribe to Mr. Sci-Fi, do, because I'm posting once a week, and we're talking about the projects I'm doing as well, which star many of your favorite science fiction actors and actresses. So, but Shape of Water is definitely Guillermo's film. No one else could have made it. He and I have been emailing back and forth. We're supposed to get together soon. He's a phenomenal man, a phenomenal talent, and a great heart. And what you see is what you get with him. He's exactly as he seems. And I'm really pleased because he told me that when he was nominated for an Oscar for Pan's Labyrinth, he was glad he didn't win. He was relieved because it gave him something to aspire to. And now with Shape of Water, he's climbed that mountain. He's gotten that dream, not one Oscar, but 2. Great, really terrific. And so I'm just thrilled by that. And then Jordan Peele, because Jordan Peele did Get Out, and that's a wonderful reinvention of him, because as we all know, he was Key and Peele, he was a comedian, and now he's done something very he transformed to horror and segued to horror. Now, horror and comedy are very similar. They both deal with our anxieties. They both deal with surprises and twists and a release of tension. And so they both have that roller coaster feel. They both are commenting, if they're doing it well, on our world now. Both of these films, Shape of Water and Get Out, comment on our world now. And I think they do it with great wisdom and insight. And again, you know, I don't mean to get on a political high horse, because my whole thing is if someone's compassionate, if they're a conservative, if they're a liberal, if they're compassionate, that's fine. But there is, as we all know, alt-right extremists who say that somehow black people, gay people, women, Latinos, Asians are stealing their place at the table. I think there's room at the table for everybody, and I say this as a white male. Now, let's not talk about ageism. I won't go there, but it's up to all of us to come with an open heart, a welcoming heart, to recognize that all of these different voices and viewpoints enrich our world. We are a nation of immigrants, and I absolutely agree with what Guillermo said at his acceptance speech about the world wants to draw lines in the sand. We want to erase those lines and see everyone as the human race. And celebrate that. And I agree, because when they use the pejorative social justice warrior, I think, well, what's the alternative? Social injustice warrior? Who wants to be a warrior for injustice? Maybe some of these extremists, but certainly not me, and certainly not the people that I care about and support. And so I think we all want to see that other people's voices, other people's viewpoints, if they come from an open heart, if they come from inclusion, that's fine. That's fine. It is not a threat. It does not make us smaller. It makes us bigger as a nation and as a world. So, so that's my 2 cents. But in terms of Get Out, Jordan Peele, because he succeeded with Get Out, CBS All Access, which has had a big success with Star Trek Discovery, has greenlit an entire season of a new Twilight Zone, and I think Jordan Peele is a terrific choice for that to bring it into the 21st century. And I'm going to be I'm in conversation with his office to do an interview with him because the new Twilight Zone companion is coming out. I just got the galleys. I just included a new paragraph about the Twilight Zone stage play that was in London, and of course about Get Out. And so he and I are supposed to sit down and talk about Twilight Zone and all of that, and that will be very fun because when they brought Twilight Zone back in the late 80s, I wrote a script for Twilight Zone called Knife Through the Veil that was a week before prep when the censors pulled the plug on it. It was extremely hard-edged back then. Now it wouldn't be, but it was about grief and redemption and forgiveness, and I think it could be very timely now in terms of what's going on. So hopefully I can get them to read it and they'll make it. And if not, at some point I'll probably make it myself. Katie Sackhoff expressed interest a few years ago in starring in it. I wrote a role for Armin Shimmerman. It could be very cool. And Christina Moses, who of course is someone I love working with. She's in Space Command. She's going to be in Elaine's movie Caesar. I just saw her the other day. She's starring in a new show called Condor. She just was starring in the originals and Containment, and of course played Sulu's daughter in Star Trek New Voyages, World Enough in Time. She would be great for the lead as well. So so we shall see. But in terms of the Oscars, in terms of fantasy films, Guillermo said that with fantasy films you can comment on the world, and I think that's absolutely true now more than ever. But this is the lesson that Rod Serling taught us, that when he did Twilight Zone, he had a lot to say about the human condition, and what's made Twilight Zone a classic isn't the twists and turns of the plot. There are lots of gimmicky stories. There's lots of stuff that comes out every single year that's just about the plot, just about the gimmicks. That's not what Twilight Zone was about. Twilight Zone was observing the world, observing the human condition with a good heart, with hope. As dark as some of those stories are, they're hopeful. Rod, I think, would have loved Get Out. I think he would have loved Shape of Water. I think he would have loved Jordan Peele and Guillermo. He would have said, come over to my house. When he won his second Emmy for Twilight Zone, he addressed Richard Matheson and Charles Beaumont and George Clayton Johnson, the three other major writers on Twilight Zone, and said, he held up the Emmy and said, come over to my house and we'll carve this up like a turkey. And so he would applaud these wonderful fantasy writer and directors who are working now and who understand the lesson that he taught all of us. So that's about it for now. In terms of Space Command, I'll be posting more soon. If you want to buy shares, people have been asking me. Shares are $7,500, and it's a great deal, and it helps us get the materials we need to sell the show. So if you want to find out about that, email me at markzickery@gmail.com or call me at 323-363-1259. Happy to talk to you. And I'll also be posting soon more about Star Trek Discovery and some other really interesting revelations. So that's it for now. We'll talk again real soon. And from Yoda and myself, have a great day and keep on trucking. Bye.